This is ACC Nation with Will Ogenin and Jim Quist, featuring ACC sports news and interviews. Available on streaming radio, podcast, and YouTube. Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ogenin, and I'm Jim Quist. It's time to talk ACC football. We're getting into the meat now of the schedule. Started out with a big bang. It almost looked like it was going to be a game, but didn't quite end up that way. Maryland with a 42-14 win over Virginia. Still some struggles there. Will, give us your thoughts and reflections on that game.
Yeah, you said it looked like it was a game for a while. Virginia got on 14-0, got touchdowns in the first two drives. Anthony Colandrea looked like the same Anthony Colandrea from last week, but then Virginia special teams have been an issue all season long, and they promptly gave up a kick return touchdown in the following drive, and that just kind of like took a little bit of momentum out of their sails. And the offense was never really the same after that. I felt that Maryland started getting going. Obviously, Talia Tagovailoa is a good quarterback, maybe not quite as good as his older brother is, but still a pretty good quarterback. And Maryland's just a more talented team. Let's be real. Yep. Now, the fourth quarter, this was a one-score game, and Virginia was going down with an opportunity to tie it, and Colandrea threw one of those an interception that was definitely a freshman-type throw where it probably would have been best served throwing it away and trying again on the next down, but everything just spiraled from there because Virginia turned it over in 4 possessions in a row, 3 interceptions and a fumble, and that led to what we had there. It was 42-14. Like I said, it was closer than the score indicates. It was just like an avalanche of turnovers really made a difference in this game. I still see some good in this Virginia team, but there's just at this point, the secondary is not very good. I thought it wouldn't be a significant drop off from last season. It clearly has been.
Yes.
Linebacker play has been a little suspect. The lines has done a pretty decent job though. Special teams is still pretty, like, coverage wise has been pretty bad. And Sparks is a good kicker. Bettridge, after a shaky start to the season and Tennessee game, has been better. I mean, he made all of his extra points, didn't kick any field goals in this game, but he's looked pretty good. It's just the coverage has been very lacking.
I'm not going to make an excuse for any coach because, they're hired and they are paid big bucks to do their job. And there's a lot of pressure on them. Here's the thing. I will say that Tony Elliott is in a position that there's been some question about some of his coordinators and their capabilities of doing the job. It takes time to build a program. It's not going to happen overnight for Virginia, especially with a school like Virginia. It's taking time, but there are signs of progress. I will agree with you. I think I saw some things that were promising in the future. I think people should feel pretty good about it if you're taking the big picture approach to things rather than that short-term instant satisfaction, which everybody wants, and you're not going to get it.
Especially where – no, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead. Jump in.
I was going to say, especially where the program is. I mean, You look where the talent was after, in that 2021 season. Yeah, we had a great offense, but a terrible defense. There was the recruiting wasn't that great last couple of years of Mendenhall's tenure, and they're playing, and this staff is playing catch up because of the timing. They didn't really have a great 22 class because they didn't really get into it until January of 22. Late. So they had to try to keep some of that 22 class together. They obviously lost some of them because of the coaching change and then they just couldn't, and then they just haven't been able to build momentum. And I think, we look at Colorado, what they're doing, what they did over there with Dion, and the way they pretty much overhauled the entire roster. That's not always going to work.
No, it's not a stretch.
And you can't, and some coaches down the road are going to try the same thing and it's not going to work, but we see it in every sport. there's a copycat effect. There's some people are going to try what Dion's did at Colorado. We see it at baseball. Everyone tries to emulate the Tampa Bay Rays. You can't be the Tampa Bay Rays. Same with the NFL. Everyone tries to copy the Patriots. You can't be the Patriots.
That's right.
It
That says it all.
Yep.
It takes time. In a normal world, normal program takes time. That's what's going on here. They're building slowly. There are some good things. I just encourage Wahoos to be positive about this. Look at the glass as being half full rather than half empty, because I think Tony Elliott is a very competent coach. I think he's bringing a whole different mindset into that program, which it needed, and it will go in the right direction, but it's going to take some time to get there. So again, if you're looking for instant gratification, go someplace else.
And we'll get to them in a little bit. The same thing can be said in Blacksburg.
Yes, exactly the same explanation. This is not happening overnight. You've got a good coach there. It's going to take some time to get the right people in there and to build it and to get that momentum going back. People tend to forget that Frank Beamer, when he came in, that place was a crap hole. I mean, come on. He took something and it took years to build. Years to build. We only remember the things that Frank Beamer at his prime, when that team was really rolling. We forget about all the stuff that was before that. It's the same thing with the George Welsh years at UVA. We tend to forget about all the crap that he had to endure to get to the glory years. So, it takes time. So,
and I'm looking at it right now because I remember, for those first few years under Beamer, 2-9, 3-8, 6-4-1, 6-5, 2-8, 92. But then from 93 on, it was basically from 93 to 2011. You're consistently winning 9, 10, 11 games. Obviously, they went to a national championship game in there. And but yeah, the reality is especially given the Virginia has some pretty high academic standards. You're taking off a certain level of player who won't meet the academic qualifications to begin with. So you're not going to be able to recruit just everybody.
Right. And that goes for the transfer portal as well. If you think the transfer portal is this magic thing that you can just, instantly plug and play.
You can't just grab everybody.
Yeah. There's some schools you can do that at.
Yeah.
But Virginia's not one of them. Tech really isn't one of them either. So, they, contrary to the nonsense that you hear out of people, Virginia Tech does have high academic standards, and it's not that easy to get into either one of these schools, obviously, for good reason. That's sort of a reflection as a whole of the ACC and their standards, and why Stanford and Cal Berkeley are two of the newest members. So moving on, a lot of complaints about Louisville not getting respect. Well, I think we made the comment that with a win over Indiana, Louisville would start to be on their way. One of the interesting comments that I saw on our YouTube page, I believe, or no, it was Reddit. Somebody had made a comment about people, and it really wasn't on our page per se. I think it was in the CFB subreddit. But anyway, they were talking about Louisville not getting respect in regard to versus Wake Forest, and when was Louisville going to take that leap over Wake Forest? The irony is that our rankings, we had those two teams tied last week. And so, I passed that along to them. And so a little satisfaction out there in the world. Louisville rolling to a 21-14 win over Indiana. This was a good challenge. It was expected to be a challenge. I wouldn't have expected any kind of blowout here at all. I'm, just kind of satisfied, and I think that's what Louisville fans ought to be, considering it's a first-year head coach in that program again, folks. Doesn't happen overnight. Braum is doing a great job. He's really building something special there. Have patience. 21-14 over Indiana. Thoughts on that game?
Yeah, good win for the Cardinals. Yeah, I thought that I thought this game was, I thought Louisville was going to win by more, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I know a lot about Indiana football, but I figured weren't going to be as up to the task. But Louisville got up to a 21-0 halftime lead, looked pretty dominant at that point, and then Indiana scored 14 in their third quarter. Their quarterback's actually pretty good, Jackson. He looks really good. I think he'll be a tough player to stop once they get in the Big Ten play. They could easily knock somebody off. But star of this game to me was Jawar Jordan, guy who is just he's going to be in the discussion for best backs in the league by end of the season. 113 yards in this game on 18 carries. And as a team, Louisville ran the ball pretty well here for 184 yards, averaging just under 5 yards per carry. And when you're doing that, you don't need to throw a lot. And they didn't. And Plummer was okay through the air. He had some big plays, but he had an 85-yard TD to thrash in this game. But God, it was yeah, I thought that Louisville was going to win by more in this game, but still a nice win. They were expected to win. They still took care of business. I'm not going to fault them for that, but I think there's still more there in them.
I think so too. And as we've always pointed out here and on our website, that 3 weeks into polling is after you get to the third week, and sometimes even after that third week of play, is when you start to really get a good picture of how a team is going to perform. And I think we're seeing this progress, this slow progress. There's always going to be some stumbling somewhere along the line. And you hope it's early in the year. And we've seen some of that early stumble, Clemson, I mean, it happens. Now the key to having a successful team and a good team is that they pick up the pieces from that stumble and then move forward and they grow from it. Now we're going to see whether or not Clemson can do that this week. But let's move into Florida State, who they're going to be playing. 31-29 win over Boston College. And boy, if anybody that would tell you watching that game that at some point or another they didn't think that Florida State was actually going to just, the bed on that one, is being unrealistic. There's a lot of ways of looking at this game, Will, and quite frankly, I saw some shortcomings on the part of Florida State, but at the same time, I actually felt pretty good about some things I saw out of Jeff Hafley's Boston College Eagles. I thought, well, this is the way that we thought this team would eventually be playing. And the way they started out the season was just crap. I've been using crap a lot today, but I may be using it in a couple other games too. So I'm just going to reserve it. But anyway,
yeah, a lot of crapping.
Yeah, a whole lot. Man, what did you take away from this game?
That's once again penalties doomed Boston College.
Yeah, that was horrible.
18 penalties. I mean, you have got to be kidding me with this. This is unacceptable. And I'd be fair to school. I did not get to see a lot of this game. I was working Saturday while this game was going on. So Jim was giving me updates, occasional updates about the game. And I know at one point it was like, 31-10 or something like that.
Crazy.
And I kind of figured okay, they're done, even though Jordan Travis got hurt right in front of halftime, but he came out. Luckily, it looked a lot worse than it actually was. But credit to Thomas Castellanos, 305 yards through the air, 95 in the ground. He was just was a really tough player for Florida State to stop. But I go back to it again.
Mm-hmm.
Unacceptable to have that many penalties and think you are going to win a football game. they've got to be. They're definitely the most penalized team in the league. 30, yeah. They've committed 38 penalties in 3 games. The second most is Syracuse at 25. It's yeah, that's three. I think that's 3 straight games with 3 straight games with 10 penalties. And obviously they lost the first one, nearly lost the second one, and lost the third one. And they've been all close games, but the common theme in all 3 of them, penalties, have crushed this team's hopes.
Absolute mind farts on the part of the players. Some of these calls were just like, and you know what? Uh, I don't think I saw anybody saying the refs were doing ticky tack calls
Mhm.
because I don't think they were. I think it was just that bad. And boy, I hope
Well,
Hafley and crew get on that and however whatever it takes to get your head back into the game here.
yeah.
Because if
Well,
they
that face mask at the end or whatever was
oh,
definitely a legit call. That was
yeah,
that was
yeah,
100%. But I know
definitely.
there was some hubbub about some disconcerting signals that were called on BC earlier in the game, and not getting a an explanation necessarily about what was going on there. And I know Hafley mentioned that today in his presser, but I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the plays to see what the issue is. But we didn't really talk about Florida State, but because everything just seemed to lie on Boston College because they were such a massive underdog at home, and this was the red bandana game, and they always just have a tendency to play better for some reason. But
Yeah.
again, Florida State looked fairly good in this game. Big matchup against Clemson next week. And you could argue that this was a little bit of a look ahead spot here. Jordan Travis looked good in this game, threw for 212 yards and threw a couple touchdown passes. Trey Benson ran the ball well. I mean, Travis himself ran the ball well. But yeah, that's a little bit of a concern if they're going to give up that many yards to a quarter to a dual threat quarterback like
Yeah.
that. But I'm it kind of makes me more intrigued for next week because we'll get to Clemson more in a little bit, but could they have found something finally?
That looks like a 50-50 game to me at this point. I think Florida State's defense just absolutely let them down. And that's a weakness that Boston College exploited and exploited very well. Florida State has to make some adjustments if they plan on winning against Clemson. But I will tell you also that Clemson's offense does not look good. So are they on the same level as Boston College? I wouldn't think so, but who knows? Like you said, we'll get into that in a little bit. Wake Forest over ODU, and this was much, much too close. And ODU, got to give you guys a lot of credit. Monarchs are an up and coming program, slowly but surely building, from the ground up and literally having nothing years ago and being one of those teams like JMU in the state of Virginia that is a threat to everybody they play, whether they play Virginia Tech, who they defeated most recently. If they take on Virginia or anybody else, they are just like JMU. They're going to be one of those teams that maybe you shouldn't put on your schedule in the future unless they come into the conference at some point, which is not
Mhm.
happening, by the way, not
Yeah.
anytime soon. So 27-24.
What a impressive comeback by the Deacs. They were down 17-0 at halftime and were trailing 24-13 in the fourth quarter, but then they came back with a couple touchdowns late to come back and win this game. Still lots of good about Wake in this game though, because even though they didn't run the ball the best with Claiborne, Ellison ran the ball well. Mitch Griffiths threw for over 300 yards, but he did throw a couple of picks in this game. A couple great games from Jamal Banks and Taylor Morin. Both had combined for close to 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. Defense, though, 10 sacks in this game.
Yeah.
That is something you do not expect from a Wake Forest defense. And that's a lot of the reason they kept themselves in this game. I mean, when you're giving up, and let's be real, ODU had a lot of big plays. They had like a fumble return touchdown, an interception return touchdown in this game. That's the kind of stuff that's, sometimes, luck aided, but still, the fact that Wake came back and won this game, it says a lot about the character of this team.
Yes. Yeah, that's always a good sign. That's a sign that a team is going to have a strong season, that they can endure through hardship and find a way to come back and get the win. Again, that's, Wake Forest is one of those teams in the ACC that you cannot allow to get anywhere near the red zone at all, because they're going to put points up on you one way or the other. And even if they're down, like I said, 17 zip, somebody's coming back here, and they certainly can run up the score. And their defense is, I think it's better this year, but there's still some spottiness there that's worrisome. Next game, NC State, the Pack with a I won't call these guys cupcakes. I used to do sideline reporting for VMI. 45-7 stayed over VMI, the Keydets. It's just one of those games that you're filling your schedule with. VMI can be at times a decent opponent, but they are a small school with a very limited number of people coming in that are super athletic at that level. So it is what it is.
Yeah, they're definitely going professional in something other than football.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's enough on that game.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, yeah, like I said, for the NC State side, you're just trying to get right and look good. I know it's been a kind of a rough start to the season. It looked a little disappointing. Even though you beat UConn, obviously had a rough outing against Notre Dame. Needed to kind of right the ship here. Looked good in this game. Um, but it all comes down next Friday, really, when you've got Brennan Armstrong, offensive coordinator Robert and O-line coach Gary Tuje going up against their former school. A lot of intrigue in that game.
Yeah, should be interesting. Duke with a 38-14 win over Northwestern. I thought this might be closer. Duke is beginning to really demonstrate that they have their stuff together, Will.
Oh, they definitely do, but Northwestern's a hot mess, obviously, with what went on there during the summer. Pat Fitzgerald as coach, and I mean, I didn't think they were going to be very good to begin with, and I figure without him, they're not going to be any more good, I guess you could say. But yeah, story of the game is all about Duke. 487 yards total, ran the ball really well, 268 yards. Riley Leonard had 97 on the ground, 219 in the air, completed 15 of 20 passes, just continues to be an amazing quarterback. Definitely, I think he's every bit the equal of a Drake May right now. Just because he's a more dual threat quarterback than May is. May's more of a pocket guy, but he's still a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Leonard is definitely going to be drafted when he's ready to go. Yeah, like they say, Duke is really good. There's a reason they're ranked. They're going to be ranked even, but their schedule gets tougher coming up, and if they can survive that and get a couple nice wins, I really like this team. I think the thing that intrigues me about this Duke team in this game is they ran 60 plays, but only got third or fourth down on 10 of them, and it just shows you they were just consistently getting first downs and whatnot by on first down or second. And when you see they averaged 8 yards a play, that really shows it too.
Yeah. Big win there. Rutgers with a 35-16 win over Virginia Tech. Again, as we mentioned earlier, a program that has got to build. And it's going to take some time. It's not like the previous group by any stretch. This is a group that has an idea of what direction they want to go, how to get there, and they seem to be building that. But again, it's going to take some time. So you Hokies have got to be patient with Coach Pry and his staff. They'll get there.
Yeah, this is, and to be fair, they're banged up and they lost their tight end Gallup for the season. Ali Jennings is hurt. They've got another wide receiver hurt. They're a little down in manpower right now. But you figure, and Grant Wells was out for those games, so they started Kyron Jones, and he did all right. Threw for 190 yards this game, threw a touchdown, ran for 74 on the ground.
Mhm.
I think it's possible that Drones is going to be QB1 going forward. Anyways, I think he shows a little bit more than Wells. I don't think Wells is that good of a quarterback. I think Drones gives you a little more of a dual threat option that
Yeah.
would probably make this offense a little bit better. But still, the defense is not very good. They allow 256 yards on the ground to Rutgers, and Rutgers is 3-0. I think they're 3-0. A pretty good team. They only threw the ball for 46 yards in this game. That just tells you just how much they relied on the run. But when you're averaging 7.5 yards a carry, why do you need to throw?
Why do anything else? Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Um, better stuff in the future for you guys. North Carolina had I think a fairly impressive win over Minnesota, 31-13, the final score there.
Yeah, impressive win for the Heels here. Minnesota's got a good defense. They have a really good defensive coordinator who's kept them, among the top defenses in the Big Ten for a few years now. And yeah, Drake May torched them for 414 yards and a couple of touchdowns here. That's just because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I mean, he still threw 2 picks in this game, but he still looked really, really good. They did have a little trouble the ground game. They only averaged 2.8 yards per carry, but like I said, Virginia or Minnesota's got a good run defense. I've watched pretty much every Gopher game this year. Obviously, I live here in Minnesota, so I do have interest in it, but their offense is not very good. I mean, their quarterback Ethan Colleague Manis he's a little got a little bit of a deer in the headlights look to him, and he also got banged up in this game, but they ran the ball really well, and that might be something to watch going forward. I know Carolina's had a couple of tough games in a row on the ground, and I wonder if that will be an issue going forward. We'll see what kind of pressure they get. I know they had 9 sacks in the opening game against South Carolina, but I think that says more about them than it does North Carolina. But maybe there's some improvement going on there that we're just not seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it gets better. Or again, third week, it's best is yet to come. I hope. Let's now. I have to laugh going into this because otherwise I would cry. If I upset you Panther fans, I apologize right up front. But I'm not going to apologize if I offend Pat Narduzzi or Phil Dracovic. Crap was the key word that we used earlier, and I said that I'd be using again. Phil, you played like crap. Pat, your excuses in regard to what's going on with the offense are crap. You need to do something. I don't, to me, there was absolutely no excuse for Pitt losing to West Virginia 17-6. I don't get it. I don't understand this mindset that Pat Narduzzi has regarding Phil. I mean, all right,
Yeah.
Will, I'm sorry.
I want to know what's going on with Phil Dracovic. It was 10 of 31 last week, 8 of 20 this week. Threw 3 picks in this game.
Yeah,
What's going on there?
he sucked. He sucked. You
He
know,
does. I mean, he does right now, but
and
and
I hate blowing somebody out of the water because we've watched Dracovic for years, and so help me God, I think that he's gotten worse over the last couple of years. I don't think he's improved, Will, at all.
hard to be when you're constantly hurt. I mean, that's what it is.
Okay,
Is he? I mean, could he be hurt and he's trying? He could be playing through something right now. I don't know.
maybe.
Thing
Well,
of it
then he got to be
is
pulled.
yeah. And I joked on Twitter the other night during while the game was going on that maybe Pat Narduzzi should just run the triple option now.
Why not? I mean, anything's got to be better than what they've been doing. I, you know, I,
I don't get it. I mean, they didn't run the ball well in this game either. And it's not like West Virginia's got a good defense, but yeah, they don't. They're just yeah. It you just got to wonder if this is kind of the beginning for this program.
hmm. No rhyme or reason in my book for that loss or the loss prior to that.
Mhm.
Cincinnati, I think, certainly is a fairly decent team. West Virginia beating Pitt 17-6 is inexcusable, and it should have been at the very least. It should have been much closer than 17-6, and everybody will go 17-6. Well, that's pretty close. It's 11 point. Well, no, it wasn't. It
The
was
way Pitt was playing on offense, that felt like an insurmountable lead.
yeah, it did. Um, it I just I had bad vibes about Pitt through that entire game. Just just felt bad about what they were doing, how they were. There was no execution. It just felt like the team fell apart, and nobody was clicking. I don't get it, but say la vie. So we'll see what happens. I'm interested in watching Twitter or X or whatever the hell Elon Musk is calling it this week. Um, what the conversation is, and on message boards with Pitt fans in regard to Pat Narduzzi. To me, I find it inexcusable the crap that he said in the press conference. I was just like, are you kidding me? Really? Do you think we're
We're
idiots?
not dumb. Yeah.
I mean,
We
serious.
know we know you don't have trust in Jurkovic or whatever. I mean, also says he probably doesn't trust what's behind him either.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you got to go with what you got to go with, and I guess that's where they stand. All right, let's move on to this next game. We didn't expect anything really different out of this. Ole Miss over Georgia Tech, 48-23, the final score there. Georgia Tech, I'm just going to say this again for the third time because this is a team that's rebuilding, right? Coach Key is in a position where he's putting things together, and I think this team is actually beginning to improve. They're starting to bring in some players. The recruitment is getting better, and they went up against a team that is definitely tougher, is ranked, and nobody should have expected a much of a difference there. But 48-23, I think is kind of a respectable loss. And I know that sounds weird. People get offended and all upset about, oh, losses are bad, period. Well, yeah, sure. But in the reality of the big picture, long term, again, you're looking at a program that's building. And if they lose to Ole Miss, it's an experience. You learn something from it, which makes you stronger, which makes you a better team long term.
This game was 24-17 with about 8 minutes left. It's not like Georgia Tech got blown out, right away. They were in this game for, like I said, 40 or 50 plus minutes, and
That's right.
Ole Miss just kind of turned it on at the end. And ended up outscoring them in the fourth quarter, 24-13. But I still think that's a pretty good effort for Georgia Tech. I mean, they're undermanned. Ole Miss is a more talented team. It's, nothing to be ashamed about. Hayes King looked good in this game, threw a couple touchdown passes. It's just they couldn't stop Jackson Dart on the other side for Ole Miss. He had 10 completions for 251 yards and then ran for 136 on the ground. So if he had the ball, he was getting chunk plays off of it, and it's really hard to win when you have somebody who can just get have that much success.
Pick you apart, basically. But that's a sign of a good team, of a competitive team, and Ole Miss is just that. It's a team I would say that one should keep an eye on this season.
Yeah, they are better. I mean, that's the reality.
Now, here's a team that I think is in my head's a lot better, and I mistakenly bet against them. Syracuse 35, Purdue 20. I regret that, and I will say this. In our podcast picks that we post every week, Will leads me 34-5, or he has the 34-5 win-loss record. I'm at 30-9. So I have been too nice to conference teams. And since we always talk about that 3 to 4 weeks, before rankings should really make any difference, all gloves are off now. I'm no longer going to just pick conference teams, though I haven't all the way, but I'm going to be a lot more selective because I have to catch up, hopefully, with Will before the end of the season, because right now he's in line to skunk me in the podcast picks. So Syracuse 35, Purdue 20.
I'm going to be honest with you. I still don't know what to think of Syracuse. We look at what they've done so far. Yeah, they're 3-0, but I don't think Purdue's any good. I mean, they still have a lot of issues. I think Hudson Card's a decent quarterback, but Syracuse beat them, but they're like 1-2 right now, Purdue, and they torched Western Michigan, who actually gave up 40 something points to Iowa, which I didn't know. I usually takes like 3 games for Iowa to get the 40 something points. They've been doing pretty well, but I want to see what they're like when they face a more level opponent. Gary Schrader is, he is a good quarterback. I think he's thriving under Jason Beck, but I'm kind of worried about him carrying it 25 times like they did in this game. I know he was sacked a couple times in this game, so that counts as stats, which I think is stupid, but carrying the ball north of 20 times, I think, is a very dangerous thing for a quarterback. They do have to adjust the game plan to take some of that off of them. You can't ask a quarterback to do that much. I mean, they ran how many plays? They ran 72 plays, and you had a hand in 53 of them. You cannot rely on that the rest of the season. You've got to get other playmakers involved, and unfortunately, they're one of their best ones, Oronde Gasson, is now out for the season with an injury he suffered last week in that Western Michigan game. They're going to be hard pressed to do something more, but they have to get some more playmakers and develop some more playmakers on this team if they're going to be successful. Now, having said that, I still think they're going to a bowl this year. That they're definitely getting there. They're probably going to win 6-7 games and look pretty good in the process. But
Dino keeps his.
Let's just say as long as Schrader's healthy.
Yeah, well, and the thing you point out there, talking about the health of a quarterback at Syracuse has a hell of a track record for their quarterbacks running a lot and getting injured. And we look
Remember Eric Dungy
the past 5+ years, and I mean, the odds are against you. You do have to keep this in mind. So. This last game that we have on our schedule, Clemson over Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic again is sort of like a VMI on a list. For Clemson 48, Florida Atlantic 14. Um, I just have questions about Cade Klubnik in the offense and the defense. There are some weaknesses there too. So this game that's coming up, this big game, and do we even need to make any comments about this game? To be honest, or do you want to?
I mean, they kind of set the tone right away with a pick six, like 90 seconds into the game. They were up 20-0 at the end of the first quarter. So you're not, and you're up 34-0 at halftime, you don't really need, when you have a lead like that, you don't really need to bust out the trickeration in the playbook. You just can just be very vanilla and move along. And that's kind of what they did. You didn't really need to do a whole lot, after that. So I wouldn't take a whole lot out of this game, to be honest with you.
Front end for me was enough. The first quarter tells, I figured was enough for me to see what I needed to see. Um, Clemson and Florida State. That is the game that everybody has been sort of waiting for. In whether you're a fan of one of the other 12 teams that are in the ACC, it's still this is a big game because it may very well decide who possibly though the top two teams are the ones that go to the ACC title championship game.
Yeah.
That we could have a repeat, but in my gut, I'm thinking that's not going to happen that way. So this may be the game that decides who the top dog is in the ACC.
Yeah, you're right. We could very well see these two teams meet up again in a couple of months, as a repeat. But with the way Clemson played opening week, it's not out of the realm of possibility that if they lose this game, they're not going to be there.
Right. That's something that everybody's got to keep in mind. And there's plenty of games on the schedule that are left that are going to be challenging. There are no gimmies ever. I mean, we've had gimmies in the past, and you just naturally assumed it was going to be one team or the other team, but no, I don't think it's playing out that way this year. The ACC is definitely a little different than it has been, and I like it. I like more of the parity that we have. There's more teams in the top tier than there has been in the past. Hey, the USA Today top 25 is out. The coaches poll came out on Sunday. Number 1 is Georgia. Number 2 is Michigan. Number 3 is Florida State. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 5 is USC. That's an interesting mix of teams, and I think they're all pretty solid. The AP folks replaced Florida State with Texas. You can throw that, take that piece of paper, crumple it, throw it in the trash can. That's how much that is worth. Notre Dame is at number 9. 17 is North Carolina. 18, Duke. When have you ever seen North Carolina and Duke back to back in football like this? Miami at 21, Clemson at 23. Clemson is not in the top 25 of the AP poll. The teams that are on receiving votes category at number 36, it's Syracuse. Number 43, Wake Forest. And all you folks at Louisville who are screaming that Wake Forest should not be ahead of you, you're at number 44. So, sorry. I don't vote in the coaches poll, obviously. So, anyway, that's what we got football wise. We got some interesting games coming up this week, and it should be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was starting Friday night. We have NC State, Virginia, as I mentioned earlier. That's the Robert and I and Brendan Armstrong, Garrett TJ coming back, and I think that game could be very close, given that this coaching staff knows the strengths and weaknesses of all three of those. Obviously, Armstrong struggled last year under this offensive system, so they know what they need to do to make him struggle. But don't know if Virginia has the horses to do it. That's the question. And I think NC State has a good enough D line that they can give whoever's starting at quarterback for Virginia some trouble, whether it be Calandry again or if Tony Musk gets healthy again.
We'll see. That's going to be an interesting play there. Who starts at quarterback? Also, Friday, that is that game. On Saturday, the schedule is Virginia Tech at Marshall, and Marshall is the favorite in that game. Army takes
That's
on
crazy to me.
Syracuse. Not to me.
Well, I mean, it says a lot about the state of Virginia Tech right now that they're an
yeah.
underdog, but it's also in Huntington. So yeah, I get it. But
yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing. Marshall's not bad this year. Army takes on Syracuse. They're the favorite. Syracuse is. Florida State is starting out at a 1.5 point favorite over Clemson. Miami is taking on Temple, rather. Miami takes on Temple. They're a 24.5 point favorite. Duke is facing UConn. They're a 21.5 point favorite. Boston College faces Louisville. Louisville is a 14 point favorite. Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, the Deacons, 6.5 point favorite. And UNC takes on Pitt. It started out at 5.5 points for the Tar Heels. I don't see that. I see it much higher. But
I think I'd put a lot of money on UNC to cover that right now.
Yeah. I don't see anything changing there dramatically. Hey, make sure that for you folks who are listening to us on streaming radio, there's plenty of platforms that you can sign into and be a part of, and make sure that you have access to us. You can also go to our website at accnation.net, where you'll find a direct link to our streaming radio, and you'll hear all the interviews for the previews of football and a lot more, and weekly podcasts are all there. Plus, if you're listening to us on a podcast, make sure that you subscribe. There is a great link on our home page at accnation.net. It gives you like 15 plus options of having the podcast delivered to you the minute it drops. It can come to you by email. It can come through Apple, Google, you name it. We're there. We're on stuff worldwide. And of course, you can check out our mugs on YouTube, and we hope that you will come join us on YouTube. Make sure that you like and you subscribe. We would appreciate it greatly. Until next time, cheers.
Cool.